Hi, this is Kendra from Pencil and Pigment, and today we're going to be doing another watercolor together. I thought for this tutorial we would do botanicals, and as for botanicals I thought we would do leaves. There's a lot of stuff you can do with a leaf, and some of it can be very symbolic. You can make it really personal, you can make it kind of fit any decor or room you go to put it in. So for leaves, you can go on any royalty-free image site, you can go through your favorite search engine, you can go through Pinterest, you could type in leaf, you could type in leaves. There's a bunch of things you can research. You can do a branch with multiple leaves. You can do one huge leaf. You can do several. And in that several, you can have one from like where you're from, one where your significant other is from, and then have kind of like a plus sign together. So it can be sort of a relationship print. You can do one where it's like 4 and it's the leaf through all seasons. Now, not all leaves change color, so if you are going for accuracy, you may need to do a little bit of research to see what color these leaves look in the winter versus in the fall. You can do things that are native to your area, to the state, you know, where you've lived. You can have a leaf from every place you've ever lived. It can be incredibly personal if you want it to be. Now, if you are someone that loves indoor plants, or you want to do a gift for someone that has a ton of indoor plants, you can do prints and a couple little watercolors of their favorite houseplants, and that can be something very personal for them that you know they'll enjoy. For this tutorial I am using, this is a 5 round, and what I'm going to do for this is I'm probably going to do a branch hanging down with multiple leaves, and what I've pre-done is I have added water to my pans. Now you can either use a little mister. I have this, it's like a 1 ounce water holder for actually filling water brushes, but I use it for squeegeeing, like a little pipette, and putting water in my watercolors ahead of time, and that just loosens up the pigment so everything's sort of ready to go. And I have my greens, I have some blues, and I have some reds. Now if you want to do something holiday themed, like you want more holiday art in your house, you could pick something like holly or mistletoe or like poinsettia leaves. And then you can have a print that you have just up for the month of December if that is something you are interested in. So not just the season, but you can pick things that sort of remind you of certain holidays. Now for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-wet my brush. And my brush is very, very wet. And we're going to do a wet on wet technique so colors bloom together. And I'm going to be doing leaf shapes. Now I'm going to start. My daughter is following along with this tutorial, so I'm just making sure she is at where I am at. Are you ready, sweetheart?
Almost.
Almost? Okay.
You're ready?
You ready? Okay. So I'm going to start, one, pre-figure out if you were matching this to colors in your home, to furniture, to throw pillows, to accessories, you might want to have a palette of pre-mixed colors that match wall colors and all that stuff already laid out, and then those are the colors you use for this print. If this is something that is just for fun or for a gift, think about the person you're giving it to, figure out what their favorite colors are or their house colors, and sort of have those pre-made out, and then those are the colors you choose from. So for this one, and then think about framing. So if this is just going to be a greeting card, then it doesn't matter where you start on the page, it's where you fold it and write in the inside. If this is going to be a print, think about framing size. What is standard framing size in your country? In the United States, it's 4x6, 5x7, 8x10, 11x14. It goes bigger, 16x20, 18x24, 24x36. Those are in inches. That is not the metric system. So figure out if you're going to make this something that you're going to frame later, or you're not using watercolors that are light fast. If you are using budget watercolors like Crayolas, then you're going to want to put this behind glass, keep it out of the light, and then make sure it's either drawn or cut to a standard picture framing size. All right, after all of that, let's finally get started. You just want to make sure you know all the options open to you with doing something like this. So I'm just going to start in the middle because that's what you can see. And I'm going to do a leaf shape. It's going to be very pointy at the tip, and I'm doing this with water. So just fill your brush with a lot of water, pointy. You just delicately touch the point, and then as you go along, you can lay your brush flat, and that gives you a thicker, wider shape. Can you see this, sweetheart? Yeah. Stand up here real quick. I'll do another one right underneath it. I'm touching it very, very gently with the tip. That gives me the point, and then I flatten the brush, and I get a wider leaf shape, and then I lift again, and it gets narrow again. So when I then go to grab a watercolor color and load up my brush, I have grabbed a dark green, and I gently tap it. I gently tap it to the area that is wet. It can bloom out. I'm going to grab another color. I'm going to grab May green, which is a really light green. And I'm going to touch that in here and let these kind of blend out. These are what a couple of my leaves are going to look like. So did you fill your brush with pigment and touch it to your page?
I'll do that.
This is the shape. If you need to do practice ones off to the side, it's very lightly touch the tip to the page, and then when you push down it gets wider, and then you gently lift, it gets narrower again. So figure out how pointy you want it to be, how round you want it to be. Figure out the shape of your leaves. Maybe your leaves are oblong. There's nothing wrong with an oblong leaf, okay? But if you like points, you need to find something that has a really nice tip, and then you push it and you gently lift back up again. And that gives you the point at the end for connecting to a stem. You get the tip at the top. This is why I'm using a round. Make sure your round has a really good tip. If you're using a budget paintbrush, something from like a kid's watercolor kit, they're round but they have a blunt tip. You want your tip to come to a point. You want some form of watercolor brush that you have purchased outside of a kid's or student grade watercolor set. Now we're going to do several more. You want your leaves coming in at different angles, and then you can connect them all with stems. So I'm going to do some leaves that are pointed down. And again, I flatten my brush and then I come back up. I'm going to rely on the stem to connect these. This is really hard to see. I apologize. But you can practice this leaf shape. Everywhere you've added water. Maybe I'll add a little bit of a blue in here. And I'm getting little tiny splatters. You can have little splatters. Little splatters are a ton of fun. Figure out your leaf shape. If it's not round enough, use the tip of your brush to help create the shape you want with your leaf. And again, this is a very wet on wet technique. It's so they kind of look mottled. If you want to then let them dry and then go over them with a colored pencil or an ink pen and then do the veining of the leaves, you can. I'm going to add more leaves here. I don't think this is nearly enough for my branch. I want another one at the bottom. So I'm going to add more color. And again, you can use reds if you want to denote fall. I am doing sort of spring colored leaves. If you want them yellow, if you want them to have all the seasons within a branch, that is absolutely something you can do. Some of these colors are very dominating and drown out the other ones, so be real careful. If you don't like the shape, you can kind of gently touch it up as it goes to dry. Just make sure your brush is really wet. How are your leaves coming, babe?
Fine.
Ooh, your leaves look great. And again, if you want to include things from your house, from wherever you're going to put this print, make sure that you have those colors. Make sure that those colors are either pre-mixed and those are the colors you pull out, or maybe you're redoing, you know, something in the hallway or the restroom or something. It is easier to match art to what you own than to have the art and try and buy furniture and find other things to match up to it. So if you do that in that order, you'll always have art that goes with everything in your house. Okay. Ooh. Now, depending on what size round you used, how big a sheet of watercolor paper you used, how large you went with your leaves, you need a tinier brush. Do you have a tiny brush over there, sweetheart? Okay. We're going to use a tiny brush for connecting all the leaves and putting them together with stems. This is a fairly quick tutorial. It's just working on shapes and figuring out what shape you want to do and understanding the shape your brush can create by the types of pressure you apply to the brush. Now this one, ooh, he is not named. He is very tiny. He might be a 0 or a 00. So I'm not going very, very large. I want you to be able to see this on the screen, and I'm going to figure out a way to connect all my leaves. So I'm going to start at the top. I'm just creating a stem. And if you want to touch up shapes, if you don't like rough edges, you can then smooth things out with a fine-tipped brush, or if you want them to be more pointed, if you like that look, you practice what each brush can do. This is what practice looks like. This is it right here. It's not fancy. It's just putting something on the page and getting to know your supplies, getting to know what the colors do. Some colors within sets are granulating, some are more opaque, some are more transparent, and it's getting to know all the colors, how they work together, how they work apart, how they work with lots of water. This is the practice. This is what this looks like. So, I want this guy to come around, I think. We can just, there's enough water and they're wet enough that I can just sort of shape them and keep them going here. And again, if you need to do a holiday card or a birthday card or something, this can very much say happy birthday in here. It could fold. It could say happy holidays. And again, it could be local wildlife, it could be local leaves. You can make this as personal as you want it to be, or just something generic and fun. It doesn't have to be that deep. It is up to you what your print looks like. This is creative licensing. You have the license to do this. It is not up to anyone else. Okay. Now you may get through and you may decide there aren't enough leaves. on the stems. If the stems are too distracting, you may want to add another element, like a little berry or a little blossom. If you want to do that, we can do that. So that is what this is starting to look like. It is lots of fun. This one's starting to dry, so I'm going to blend that out. Let's see if you can see the bottom one here. Alright, so this is what my leaf branch looks like. Now, we know from the color wheel that the complementary color to green is red, okay? So if we want to have bright complements, we could do red berries. So I am going to take my tiny brush, and I don't even think I'm going to have my berries touch the leaves or the stems. And the reason for that is because these are so wet that when you mix, when red and green touch, it creates a brown. I love brown, but I want to keep these bright complements. So I am going to use a red scarlet here. And I'm just going to work on circles. I'm going to do, let's see, different sizes. They don't all have to be the same size. Okay, and I'm going to have some berries here. Are you going to add stems?
No.
No? Okay. You can have floating leaves. This shape also does really, really well for the body of a fish. So if you want to then go in and figure out fins or tails, it makes a great fish body. I don't want everything in threes. I mean, 3 is a cool number, but I don't need it always. So here are my berries. Now I want to add a little bit. I like 2 colors within everything I go to create. This is 1 color. I'm going to take a darker red, and I'm just going to lightly tap it. And it's just going to add the illusion of a little bit of drop shadow. Just lightly touch it. That way my red is a little bit richer. There's a little bit more volume to it. If you don't want big berries, you can always splatter. Take your brush, lightly tap it, and you can create more. We can do that with a green. Here, let's get this May green. Make sure there's enough water on my brush, and we're going to splatter, okay? Now this is going to mix with everything that's wet. So some of my red may mix with this green. Knowing that ahead of time, okay, this is my print. I will zoom in and show you. All right, this is my finished print. Now, if you have a last minute holiday party you've been invited to, or you need to come up with sort of a white elephant gift, you can research white elephant parties and what that is. Watercolors, homemade art works well for that. What you want to keep in mind is because this is so wet, because water was put on first and then pigment was later just tapped on, do this in advance. Try and do this a day before. If you want to still play around with it while it is wet and shape things, you can absolutely do that because of the nature of how wet we made these leaves. You can then go ahead and add a little bit more volume if you think they should be bigger, if you want them to have finer pointed tips, have strong lines and shape. You can then touch them up and do that. You can have a practice sheet. If you want to swatch some new colors you received, let's go down and If you've received some new watercolors as a gift and you want to swatch them, you can very much swatch them in leaf shapes. It doesn't have to be squares. This is a great way to practice form and shape while doing something you need to do, which is have swatches of all your watercolors so you know what all your colors look like together. You know what they look like pale, you know what they look like strong. My swatches, this set I have of the Schmincke Hoodrum Aquarelle comes with a swatch card. Let's see if I can get that out. And this is how I swatched it, pale to dark, so I could see what the pigments look like, especially for things that are really dark like indigo. You want to see the range. And some of these colors have a huge range. So that is how I swatch them. But if you want to swatch leaf shapes and then take those sheets of practice leaves, if you want to then cut them and make them gift tags for Christmas presents, or for if you're making gifts for your neighbors or folks in the community, it's a fun way to just include a little bit of something personalized like art that's watercolor. I hope you enjoyed this really quick tutorial. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.